dull, daft, and boring security fence surrounding the state penitentiary played nature slowly reclaiming what man had abandoned. The prison's concrete walls stood tall ahead of us. "You sure about this, Wendy?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper, even though we were a half-mile from the nearest neighbor. "We've done this place 3 times already," I reminded him, shining my flashlight along the perimeter. "Just never made it to the isolation wing." Gina stepped beside me. "The light's perfect right now. That golden hour glow coming through the broken windows will make for amazing shots. If we don't get tetanus first," Bryce added with a nervous laugh. He was always like this at the beginning of explorations, anxious energy masked with humor. I ducked through the gap in the fence we discovered during our first visit last spring. The others followed. Our boots crunch on the gravel path hidden beneath fallen leaves. Decades of neglect had transformed the prison grounds into an odd mix of institutional decay and wild growth. "Stay together until we reach the main building," I said. Gina consulted her phone, reviewing the drone footage she'd captured last week. At the northeast corner, we scout the administration building first, then proceed directly to the restricted section. The cool evening air carried the musty scent of decaying wood and concrete. I'd researched that it was closed suddenly in 2002. The real story, according to local forums and former employees we'd interviewed, involved unexplained incidents in the isolation wing and staff refusing to work there. We reached the administration building, its windows long since shattered by vandals or storms. I found our usual entry point, a first-floor window with the frame mostly intact, but the glass missing. "I'll go first," I said, switching on my headlamp before climbing through. The well-known smell of mold and dust filled my nostrils as I landed on the cracked linoleum floor. I swept my light across the room. Once an office, now stripped of anything valuable, walls covered with crude graffiti. I'd seen it all before, but something about knowing we were heading to the isolation wing today made the atmosphere feel different. "All clear," I called back, helping Gina through the window. Liam came next, followed by Bryce, who predictably stumbled on the landing and cursed under his breath. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah, just twisted my ankle a little. I'm fine." Bryce tapped his foot on the ground as if proving it to himself. Gina's camera clicked rapidly as she captured the entrance area. We moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, passing through the main administrative offices where scattered papers and overturned furniture made the place look abandoned in a hurry. "Main cell block ahead," I announced, pushing open a heavy metal door that groaned in protest. The vast space opened before us. 3 tiers of cells stretching in both directions, light filtering through skylights far above. Unlike the offices, the cell block was unusually quiet. Rusted bed frames still bolted to walls, toilets, and occasional personal effects left behind by former inmates filled the space. "I swear this place feels colder every time we visit," Gina said. Her breath was visible in the beam of her flashlight. Liam nodded. Temperatures dropped about 7 degrees since we entered the building. Bryce slapped Liam's shoulder. "That's because it's getting dark, man. Basic science." "No, it's dropping faster than it should," Liam insisted. "Doesn't feel natural." I'd learned to trust Liam's observations. He had an uncanny sensitivity to environments that had proven useful on previous explorations. "Let's keep moving," I said, heading toward the northeast corridor. "We've documented this section thoroughly already. I want at least 2 hours in the isolation wing before we lose daylight completely." Gina unfolded our hand-drawn map, comparing it to the official blueprint we'd found online. "We need to go through the cafeteria, past medical, then through the administrative corridors. The isolation wing should be at the end of that hallway." "Check this out," Bryce called, pointing to a wall calendar frozen in October 2002, the month the prison closed. Gina photographed the calendar while I moved ahead. We'd spent months planning this visit, coordinating our schedules and gathering equipment. The isolation wing represented the final unexplored section of Compton Prison, a place even other urban explorers rarely ventured. The The medical wing came next. Its examination rooms and medicine cabinets long since looted of anything valuable. An old X-ray viewing box hung crooked on one wall. Its plastic screen cracked, but it is still in place. Remember what that former guard told us? I asked as we moved through. How they kept having to replace staff assigned to the isolation wing. Liam nodded. Guards claimed the place made them hear things. Or see things, Gina added, her camera clicking steadily, though he might have been exaggerating to sell a better story. People love to feed urban legends, as but water running cold is an erotic secret to many. We continued through corridors that grew narrower as we approached the administrative section connected to the isolation wing. The walls here were different. Concrete rather than painted dry wall, with fewer windows and more security features. As we turned the final corner before the administrative corridors, a strange sensation washed over me. Pressure is building in my ears like descending rapidly in an airplane. I swallowed hard. You guys feel that? I asked. Feel what? Bryce looked confused. Gina shook her head, but Liam's expression changed. Like pressure. Yeah, I felt it. The corridor ahead stretched about 50 yards, ending at a set of double doors with faded lettering. Even from this distance, I could make out the words, authorized personnel only, and beneath it, isolation wing. Let's take 5, I suggested, pointing to a small break room on our left. Hydrate and review the plan before we head in. I unslung my backpack and pulled out water bottles, passing them around as we gathered around a table covered in a fine layer of dust. So, what's the plan? Bryce asked, taking a long drink. I spread out our map, indicating the isolation wing's layout based on partial blueprints we'd found. We stay together and document everything methodically. Gina focuses on photography, Liam on environmental readings, and Bryce on video. I'll coordinate and take notes. I heard they kept the worst offenders there, Liam said quietly. Violent inmates. And supposedly some who claim to be possessed, Gina added, her voice neutral yet eyes betraying her fascination with the supernatural. Well, the only things possessing that place now are mold, cockroaches, and rats, I replied. We've explored dozens of places with ghost stories attached to them. Never found anything that couldn't be explained by natural causes. Bryce nodded enthusiastically. Remember that haunted hospital in Denver? Turned out the weird noises were just pipes expanding. This place feels weird, though, Liam insisted. Like something's waiting for us. I noticed Gina shiver slightly, though she tried to hide it by adjusting her camera. We stick to the plan, stay together, and document everything objectively. As we prepared to continue, I checked our supplies one last time. Extra batteries, first aid kit, protein bars, backup flashlights, all accounted for. Everyone ready. I asked, my hand on the door. The heavy door refused to budge under my hand. I pushed harder, my confidence faltering as it became clear something was wrong. It's locked, I said, stepping back to examine the massive steel barrier that separated us from the isolation wing. Gina looked puzzled. That doesn't make sense. The decommissioning report said all internal locks were disabled in 2002. Let me try, Bryce offered, throwing his shoulder against the door. The impact reverberated through the corridor but produced no movement. We spent the next 2 hours combing through the administrative sections adjacent to the isolation wing, gathering whatever information we could find. The prison's records lay scattered across offices and storage rooms left behind in what appeared to be a hasty evacuation. I flipped through a stack of inmate complaint forms in what had once been the prison administrator's office. The yellowed papers documented increasingly bizarre incidents. Listen to this, I called to the others. Inmate 4532 requests transfer from cell block D after reporting voices emanating from air vents connected to the isolation wing. Request denied. Gina looked up from her own pile of documents. There are dozens of similar reports here. She aimed her camera at an incident report, the flash momentarily brightening the dim room. This one describes a mass psychosis event in March 2002. 3 guards and 4 inmates experienced identical hallucinations simultaneously. That could be explained by carbon monoxide poisoning, I suggested, though something about the clinical language of the report felt deliberately evasive. Liam entered from an adjacent office, his face pale in the beam of his headlamp. I found maintenance logs for the entire facility. The isolation wing consumed 3 times more electricity than any other section, even though it housed fewer inmates. The chief engineer flagged it multiple times. Why would a smaller section need more power? Bryce asked, looking up from a filing cabinet he'd been searching. We continued our search as the afternoon progressed. The prison felt different since we arrived. The silence seemed more intense. Bryce's excited voice broke through my thoughts. Holy shit, guys, come look at this. We gathered around a large architectural blueprint he'd unrolled across a dusty desk. The paper was marked with red, classified stamps. These are renovation plans for the isolation wing. Bryce explained, pointing to dates in the corner. The data is just 4 months before the prison shut down. Look at the structural changes. Unforced walls, specialized wiring, and some kind of containment system. That's not standard for any prison I know of. Gina photographed the blueprints while I studied the details. The renovations appeared extensive and technically sophisticated. Whatever purpose they served went far beyond housing difficult inmates. This doesn't make sense, I muttered. Why pour resources into renovations right before closure? We spent another hour attempting to force the isolation wing door, using every tool in our exploration kit. The lock mechanism refused to give. It's almost like it's locked from the inside, Liam said, examining the doorframe. But that's impossible unless someone's in there, Gina finished his thought. We all fell silent, considering the implications. The prison had been abandoned for years. The idea of someone living in the isolation wing all this time seemed absurd, yet the locked door defied explanation. We should split up, I finally suggested, checking my watch. We've got about 2 hours of decent light left. Bryce nodded. What's the plan? Gina and Bryce checked the warden's office for keys or lock overrides. Liam, survey the exterior walls of the isolation wing, look for structural weaknesses, broken windows, damaged walls, and anything we could use as an entry point. I'll check the maintenance tunnels we found last time. They might lead under the isolation wing. 2 hours, Gina said. If none of us finds a way in, we meet back at the main entrance and try again another day. We synchronized our watches. Gina pulled me aside while Liam and Bryce gathered their gear. Be careful in those tunnels, she said. The structural integrity down there didn't look great last time. The maintenance tunnels had shown significant water damage during our previous visit. 2 hours, she repeated, not a minute longer. The maintenance access hatch was located in the basement level, near the old boiler room. I descended the rusted ladder carefully, wincing at each metallic groan. My flashlight illuminated the narrow concrete tunnels stretching ahead. The damp air smelled of moisture and decay with the musty scent of long, abandoned spaces. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. I consulted the hand-drawn map from our previous exploration, orienting myself toward where the isolation wing should be located. 10 minutes into the tunnels, my flashlight beam caught something that made me freeze. Footprints marked the thick dust covering the floor. Not our footprints from months ago, but fresh ones. The distinct tread pattern led deeper into the tunnel system, heading directly toward the area beneath the isolation wing. I crouched to examine them more closely. The prints were clear and undisturbed, made within the last day or two at most. I felt suddenly cold in a way that had nothing to do with the tunnel's temperature. We weren't alone in Compton Prison. Against my better judgment, I began following the footprints, moving deeper into the maintenance tunnels. The footprints continued deeper into the tunnel system, each one perfectly preserved in the undisturbed dust. I followed them carefully, marking my path with chalk arrows on the walls every few yards. The maintenance tunnels narrowed as I progressed, forcing me to duck beneath hanging pipes and step over crumbling concrete debris. 30 minutes had passed since I'd separated from the others. The rational part of my brain urged me to turn back, to rejoin Gina and the team at our meeting point. But I needed to understand what these footprints meant. Someone had been down here recently. Someone who might hold the key to accessing the isolation wing. My headlamp light moved across the curved tunnel walls and showed something that didn't belong. Behind a row of rusted storage shelves, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was the outline of a door. What the hell? I muttered, moving closer. The metal shelves had been subtly positioned to conceal the entrance, but whoever had passed through recently hadn't returned them to their exact original position. I squeezed behind them, running my gloved hand along the door's surface. Unlike everything else in the tunnels, its hinges weren't caked with rust. They shone with fresh oil. The dust around the frame had been disturbed, confirming my suspicion that someone had used this entrance very recently. The room buzzed with activity, actual functional machinery that appeared to be fully operational. My flashlight showed what looked like industrial furnaces, but with configurations unlike any I'd seen before. They had the bulk and cast iron construction of equipment of old, yet incorporated elements that seemed impossibly advanced. Copper pipes ran from these machines throughout the room, each inscribed with intricate symbols that resembled no language I recognized. Most disturbing was the quiet sound of power running. Everything was working, even though the prison's electrical system had been decommissioned decades ago. I pulled out my radio. "Gina, come in. You're not going to believe what I found." Only static answered. "Liam, Bryce, anyone reading me?" Nothing but electronic noise. The concrete walls must have been too thick for the signal to penetrate. In the center of the chamber stood what could only be described as an elevator, but not the institutional steel box you'd expect in a prison. This was an elaborate brass construction with ornate doors and an intricate control panel that glowed with soft amber light. The panel displayed floor options that made no logical sense for Compton Prison's 3-story structure, B1 through B17, and a single button marked IW. Isolation Wing. I checked my watch. I still had 45 minutes before I needed to meet the others. The elevator potentially offered direct access to our objective, the mysterious section that had eluded us all day, but using it meant venturing further alone without telling the team where I'd gone. "I should go back," I said to the empty room, my voice bouncing off the concrete walls. The responsible choice was clear. Return to the meeting point, bring everyone here, and explore this impossible chamber together. There would be worry if I didn't show up on time. Liam would want to take readings of the machinery. Bryce would document everything on video. But what if the elevator only worked now because whoever had passed through recently had activated it? What if this opportunity disappeared by the time I returned with the others? I stared at the glowing IW button, remembering all our preparation and all our failed attempts to access the isolation wing. The rational choice fought against my overwhelming curiosity. Curiosity won. Just a quick look, I promised myself. I approached the elevator and pressed the call button. The brass doors slid open with surprising smoothness, revealing an interior that contrasted sharply with the surrounding decay. The elevator car was immaculate, with polished wood panels, brass fixtures, and softly glowing lights recessed into the ceiling. No dust, no damage, not even scuff marks on the floor. It looked freshly installed. I hesitated at the threshold, experiencing a moment of instinctive dread that I couldn't explain. Something about the elevator felt wrong, not just out of place, but fundamentally wrong, as if it didn't belong in our reality. I shook off the feeling. After years of urban exploration, I'd learned to distinguish between genuine danger and the mind playing tricks in unsettling environments. This was just an elevator, albeit a strangely well-maintained one. I stepped inside. Before I could turn to press the IW button, the doors closed behind me with alarming speed. The control panel illuminated, and the IW button depressed on its own. What the? I lunged for the door open button, but the elevator had already begun its descent. The sensation was unlike any elevator I'd experienced. The car moved with impossible smoothness, yet I felt we were descending far faster than any normal elevator should. The descent continued far longer than physically possible. Each number represented depths that should have put us well below the water level, possibly into bedrock. Yet the elevator continued its smooth journey downward. A wave of claustrophobia hit me. I'd been in tight spaces during explorations before, but something about this situation, the sealed car, the impossible depth, and the sense of moving into unknown territory triggered a primal panic I struggled to control. Still descending, I continued narrating, keeping my voice steady to calm myself. Approaching B-17 now, the elevator slowed, finally stopping at what the panel indicated was B-17. I checked my watch again. Incredibly, 40 minutes had passed since I'd entered the elevator. The descent had taken far longer than it should have, eating into my remaining exploration time. I had 5 minutes left before I needed to head back to meet the others. 5 minutes to glimpse the isolation wing and return to the elevator. The brass doors slid open. Before me stretched a corridor that shared nothing with the decaying prison above. The walls, floor, and ceiling were a pristine, almost luminous pink. The hallway extended forward with clinical precision, illuminated by recessed lighting that cast no shadows. The air smelled sterile, with a subtle metallic undertone that caught in the back of my throat. This wasn't the isolation wing I'd expected. I stepped out of the elevator, turning to make sure I could get back in. As the doors closed behind me, they seamlessly blended into the pink wall, leaving no trace of the entrance. The elevator was gone. My way back had vanished. I was alone in a pristine pink corridor that shouldn't exist, somewhere far beneath Compton Prison, with no clear way to return to the others. The smooth pink wall felt cold under my palm, unnaturally so. I pressed harder, searching for any crease or seam where the elevator doors had been just moments before. Nothing. The entrance had completely vanished. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, my voice sounding flat in the sterile air. I turned to face the corridor stretching before me. Unlike the crumbling decay of Compton Prison above, this hallway looked brand new or maybe timeless, like it didn't age at all. The floor gleamed under bright fluorescent lighting recessed into the ceiling. No dust, no signs of age or wear, just polished perfection extending farther than I could see. I pulled out my camera and started recording, narrating quietly as I documented my surroundings. I'm in some kind of corridor beneath Compton Prison. This doesn't match any of the blueprints we studied. The construction appears recent, though that should be impossible given the prison's abandonment 23 years ago. I reached out to touch the wall again, this time running my fingers along its surface. The material resembles drywall yet feels denser, colder. The air smelled like hospitals, with a metallic scent that made my throat feel strange. With no other options, I began walking forward, keeping close to the right wall. Our exploration rule number 1 is always to maintain contact with one wall in an unfamiliar space to avoid walking in circles. The hallway extends hundreds of feet with no visible doors or windows. I continued narrating into my camera. No junction points or access panels. Nothing but pink walls, pink ceiling, pink floor. My footsteps bounced back strangely, as if the sound returned a half-beat too late. I'd been in countless abandoned buildings, but never had I felt so completely isolated, so removed from the world above. After walking for about 10 minutes, I noticed something odd. The corridor appeared straight ahead, but looking back, I could only see about 50 feet behind me before the hallway curved gently out of sight. "That's not right," I said to myself. I stopped and turned completely around. I was certain I'd been walking in a straight line, Yet the corridor behind me curved away as if I'd been following a gentle arc all along. I checked my compass. The needle spun lazily, unable to settle on a direction. My watch still worked, but showed that over 20 minutes had passed since I'd entered the corridor. Some seemed to be moving normally, at least according to my perception. I continued forward, increasingly aware of subtle spatial distortions. The hallway curved almost imperceptibly to the left, making it impossible to see very far ahead. Yet I never felt like I was turning. My inner ear registered no change in direction. The layout defies normal architecture. I spoke into the camera, trying to keep my voice steady. It curves without feeling like it curves, like walking on a giant spiral that's so gradual you perceive it as straight. My thoughts turned to Gina and the others. They'd be expecting me at the meeting point soon. What would they do when I didn't show up? Would they find the maintenance tunnels, the hidden door, this impossible elevator? The further I walked, the more the odd environment began to affect me. After what my watch claimed was 40 minutes of walking, I heard it. A sound that didn't come from me. A deep, labored breathing traveled through the corridor, bouncing off the walls and pulses that seemed to ripple through the air itself. I stopped dead, holding my own breath to listen. "Hello?" I called out, hope briefly flaring that I'd found another person. Maybe Gina, Liam, or Bryce had somehow found their way down here, too. No response. Just that continued rhythmic breathing. Too deep, too wet-sounding to be human. It reminded me of the time I'd visited my grandfather in hospice, the ragged sound of lungs struggling to function. Is anyone there? I tried again, my voice smaller this time. The breathing continued unchanged. Something about its steady mechanical quality sent a chill up my spine. Whatever made that sound wasn't responding to me. It might not even be aware of me. I moved forward more cautiously now, keeping my footfalls as silent as possible. The breathing grew louder with each step, coming from somewhere just beyond the curve ahead. My camera remained clutched in my hand, still recording. I raised it to eye level, using the display screen to look around the bend before physically committing to the turn. The screen showed only a pink corridor, but the sound was definitely coming from just ahead. I took a deep breath and rounded the gentle curve. My body froze before my mind could process what I was seeing. Every instinct screamed to run, but shock rooted me to the spot. Blocking the entire corridor lay what I can only describe as a massive corpse-like entity. Its bloated gray flesh pressed against the walls and ceiling, filling the space from floor to top. The creature appeared vaguely humanoid, but horribly enlarged to impossible proportions. It had to be at least 15 feet tall, though it lay on its side, completely blocking the corridor. Its skin was translucent, similar to wax paper with light behind it. Dark fluids pulsed slowly through oversized veins visible beneath the surface. The rhythm matched the labored breathing that now surrounded me completely. The thing's face was mercifully turned away from me, pressed against the far wall. But even from behind, I could see occasional twitches ripple across its massive body, subtle movements that belied its corpse-like appearance. The sterile smell of the corridor was now overwhelmed by the sharp sting of chemical preservatives, for methylated spirits perhaps or something similar. That was enough. Whatever this place was, whatever that thing was, I needed to get out. I needed to find the others, to reach safety, and to return to the world that made sense. I turned and ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until the stitch in my side forced me to slow to a walk. According to my watch, I'd been running for nearly 10 minutes. I should have reached the spot where the elevator disappeared, but the pink corridor stretched endlessly ahead, moving gently out of sight just as before. This isn't possible. I gasped between breaths. I should be there by now. I leaned against the wall, trying to calm myself, trying to think logically. The spatial distortions I'd noticed earlier. Was I running in circles? No, I'd maintained contact with the right wall the entire time. Urban exploration rule number 1. I pushed off the wall and continued walking, fighting rising panic. I'd find the elevator. I had to. Gina and the others would be worried by now, searching for me above. I needed to get back to them to warn them about what lay beneath Compton Prison. The corridor continued its gentle curve with identical pink walls offering no landmark, no reference point, and no way to know how far I'd come or how far I had yet to go. The entity's breathing had faded completely now, replaced by the sound of my own ragged gasps and the soft thud of my boots against the polished floor. But the memory remained vivid. That massive creature blocking the hallway, those visible fluids poolsing beneath translucent skin, the occasional twitches suggesting life where there should be none. I walked faster, desperate to find the elevator entrance that had disappeared. My watch showed I'd been in this underground section for over an hour now. Gina would definitely be searching for me. The pink corridor stretched before me, curving gently out of sight. I had no choice but to continue forward, hopping to find my way back, hopping to escape this sterile, impossible place and the horror it contained. I had to find that elevator, had to get back to Gina and the others. I broke into a sprint, my boots slapping against the polished floor. According to my mental map, I should have reached the elevator entrance by now. But the corridor just kept going, curving gently in a way that prevented me from seeing more than 50 feet ahead or behind. 5 minutes of running became 10. 10 became 15. My lungs burned and a stitch stabbed at my side, but the elevator entrance was nowhere to be found. "This isn't possible," I gasped. I stared at the corridor stretching behind me. Identical pink walls, floor, and ceiling extending into the distance before curving out of sight. No sign of the elevator. No indication I'd made any progress at all. I pulled off my backpack and dug through it, searching for anything that might help. My hands closed around a small pry bar we used for opening stuck doors. I approached the nearest wall and wedged the metal edge against it, expecting the drywall-like surface to crack or dent. The pry bar slid off without leaving a mark. I tried again, putting my full weight behind it. Nothing, not even a scratch. What the hell is this made of? I muttered, running my fingers over the pristine surface. I grabbed my utility knife next, flicking open the blade and pressing it against the wall. The sharp edge should have sliced into the material, but it skated across the surface like I was trying to cut glass with a plastic spoon. I felt suddenly panicked. I pounded my fist against the wall, the impact sending shock waves up my arm but leaving the surface unmarked. "Hello," I shouted, my voice bouncing back at me from all directions. "Is anyone there? Can anyone hear me?" Only my own voice bounced back at me, distorted and wrong, like the acoustics of the space weren't functioning normally. I checked my watch, 7:42 p.m. I'd entered the prison with the team at 1:3 p.m. 6 hours had passed. 6 hours. Gina, Liam, and Bryce would have realized I was missing hours ago. They'd be searching for me. Maybe even contacted authorities, despite risking trespassing charges. I needed to think logically to approach this situation with the same methodical analysis I'd applied to countless other explorations. "Okay, Wendy," I said aloud, needing to hear a human voice even if it was just my own. "You're in some kind of structure beneath Compton Prison. The spatial dimensions don't make sense. The elevator disappeared. There's a thing blocking the path forward." Saying it out loud made it sound insane, but it also helped organize my thoughts. The walls are impenetrable, even though they look like standard construction materials. Time seems to be passing normally on my watch, but my phone is malfunctioning. Gina and the others must be searching by now. I took a deep breath, trying to control my racing heart. I need to keep moving. Maybe there's another way out further along. I shouldered my backpack and began walking again, this time away from where I'd seen the entity. If the elevator entrance was truly gone, my only option was to look for an alternative exit. As I walked, I pulled out my pocket knife again. This time, instead of attacking the wall, I used it to scratch a small X into the surface. To my surprise, the knife left a visible mark. Not deep, but definitely there. "At least I can track where I've been," I murmured, feeling a small victory in this simple accomplishment. Every 20 paces, I marked another X on the wall, creating a trail I could follow. The corridor continued its gentle curve, never revealing more than a short distance ahead. The pink surfaces began to strain my eyes, the lack of visual reference points creating a disorienting effect similar to snow blindness. After what my watch claimed was 30 minutes of walking, I paused to check my progress. I turned to look back at my trail of marks. They were gone. No, that's not. I rushed back to where the most recent X should have been. The wall was pristine, unmarked as if I had never scratched it. My brain struggled to process what was happening. Had I imagined making the marks? No, I'd watched the knife cut into the material, had seen the scratches with my own eyes. I made a new mark, pressing the knife harder this time, carving a deeper X into the wall. I stood watching it for several minutes. Nothing happened. The mark remained clearly visible. I continued forward, marking the wall again and glancing back frequently. 5 minutes later, when I checked again, the new mark had also vanished. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. Whatever this place was, it seemed to be healing itself, erasing my attempts to impose human order on its surfaces. 3 identical hallways branched out from where I stood, each looking exactly like the one I'd been following. "This wasn't here before," I said, my voice sounding small in the frigid air. I was certain this intersection hadn't existed minutes ago. I turned to look behind me, half expecting to see that my path had vanished as well. The corridor behind remained intact, curving gently out of sight, but my footprints in the thin layer of frost that now covered the floor showed I'd walked in a straight line to this junction. The layout was changing, rearranging itself as I moved through it. "Hello," I shouted again, louder this time, desperation edging my voice. "Gina, Liam, can anyone hear me? I'm trapped down here." My shouts bounced down all 3 corridors, the sound distorting unnaturally before fading. I continued calling until my voice grew hoarse, hopping against hope that sound might travel through some ventilation system to the prison above. After several minutes of shouting with no response, I studied the 3 options before me. Each hallway appeared identical, the same pink walls, the same pulsing lights, and the same light coating of frost. Nothing distinguished one from the others. I chose the leftmost corridor, keeping a hand pressed against the wall as I moved forward. The cold was becoming painful now, seeping through my clothes and numbing my fingers. The pulsing lights overhead had settled into a rhythm that made me nauseous if I looked up for too long. This new corridor twisted and turned, unpredictably, sometimes narrowing until my shoulders nearly brushed both walls, sometimes widening into circular chambers with multiple exits. I chose paths instinctively, trying to maintain a general direction that I hoped would lead to an exit. After what felt like hours, but my watch claimed was only 45 minutes, I entered a space unlike any I'd encountered so far. The corridor opened into a rectangular room approximately 30 feet long and 20 feet wide. Unlike the sterile pink hallways, this space contained furniture and equipment. Real desks lined the walls. Their surfaces were covered with papers and antiquated office equipment. Typewriters, rotary phones, and adding machines. Filing cabinets stood in neat rows along one wall. A large chalkboard dominated the far end of the room. Covered with equations and diagrams I couldn't begin to understand. The entire setup resembled a research station from the 1960s, perfectly preserved. "What the hell is this place?" I whispered, moving cautiously into the room. Unlike the corridors, the temperature here was almost normal. The lights remained steady without the nauseating pulse. For the first time since entering the elevator, I felt like I'd found a space designed for human occupation. I approached the nearest desk, examining the papers scattered across its surface. Most were covered with dense technical text and diagrams, bearing government classification stamps and project codes. The letterhead on several documents read, Department of Energy, Special Projects Division. One folder caught my eye, labeled Project Threshold, Phase 2 Results. I I flipped it open, revealing a typed report dated June 17, 1974. Classified, top secret, read the header. The text below began. Following successful containment of the boundary entity, Project Threshold has entered Phase 2 testing of dimensional folding capabilities. Initial results confirm our hypothesis that the breach has created a self-sustaining pocket dimension within the primary containment zone. Spatial properties within this zone do not conform to standard Euclidean geometry, making conventional mapping impossible. 3 subjects failed to return from the containment zone even though they followed retrieval protocols. We believe the interior architecture is unstable and subject to reconfiguration without apparent pattern. Warning: reality contamination is spreading beyond primary containment. Recommend immediate construction of a secondary containment structure around affected areas. Current estimates suggest dimensional instability could extend to a radius of a mile within 50 years if left unchecked. My hands trembled as I set down the report. The prison's isolation wing hadn't been built to contain dangerous inmates. It had been constructed to contain a tier in reality, a breach into another dimension. And that massive corpse-like thing I'd encountered, it wasn't dead. It was in stasis, acting as a living plug in the dimensional breach. I suddenly understood my situation clearly. I was trapped in what the documents called a space that existed alongside our reality but followed different rules. A place that might not have an exit back to our world. I gathered the most informative documents, stuffing them into my backpack. The reports mentioned retrieval protocols for test subjects. If inmates had been sent in and retrieved, there must be a way out. As I stood to continue exploring, the lights flickered and dimmed. The room's temperature dropped suddenly, frost blooming across the desks and papers in delicate patterns. The walls seemed to flex slightly, as if the room itself were breathing. I backed toward the door I'd entered through, only to find it had vanished. The isolation wing wasn't merely containing something from another dimension. It had become that other dimension, and I was trapped inside it. I chose the middle corridor and started walking. I had to find a way out. I had to get back to Gina and the others. I had to escape this impossible place before I became another test subject who failed to return. My watch claimed 4 hours had passed since finding the research station. That couldn't be right. The battery had been new when we started this exploration, but I'd been in this underground labyrinth so long the digits now flickered erratically. Gina must be out of her mind with worry, I muttered. My voice was raspy from shouting in the increasingly dry air. The floor beneath my boots had changed. No longer the polished surface I'd first encountered. It now gave slightly under my weight like memory foam. Each footstep left an impression that slowly filled back in after I moved on. I tested it with my hand, pressing down to watch the material yield and then recover, like living tissue. The corridor widened into another room, different from the research station I'd found earlier. Metal observation chairs bolted to the floor faced a large glass window. Behind the glass lay a small chamber with restraints built into a central chair. Electrodes and monitoring equipment hung from the ceiling on retractable arms. A testing chamber, I whispered, approaching the glass. The control panel below the window contained dozens of dials and switches, all labeled with technical jargon that meant nothing to me. One large button was encased in red plastic with the words "Emergency Breach Protocol" printed beneath it. A notebook lay open beside the panel. I scanned the last entry, dated March 12, 2002. Subject 17 was exposed to direct contact with the boundary entity today. Metal readings showed rapid neural pattern degradation, followed by what appears to be synchronization with non-Euclidean frequencies. The subject began speaking in multiple voices simultaneously before losing consciousness. Upon revival, the subject demonstrated the ability to predict spatial changes 3, 4, and 5 minutes before occurrence. I studied these photos carefully. The entity I'd seen blocking the corridor was massively larger than what had first come through. In these early photos, it was roughly human-sized, but with each subsequent image, it grew larger, as if more of it was continuously pushing into our dimension. The final photos showed the construction of the isolation wing, the prison built around the breach to disguise what lay beneath. Inmates were brought in, some as test subjects, others as genuine prisoners, to maintain the facade. I pocketed several photographs as evidence, though a voice in the back of my mind questioned whether I'd ever be able to show them to anyone. I pushed forward, my muscles aching with exhaustion. According to my malfunctioning watch, I'd been in this place for nearly 10 hours now. My water bottle was almost empty, and I was very hungry. The corridor opened into another room. This one is clearly a researcher's private office. Papers were scattered across the floor as if someone had left in a hurry. A cot in the corner suggested they'd been living here. A journal lay open on the desk. 2.5 shivers ran down my spine when I investigated it. The handwriting started neat in academic terms, but deteriorated into frantic scrolls by the final pages. Start of the notebook entries, Day 47 underground. The breach is expanding faster than our containment measures. Harrison went to check the sensors in Section C and never returned. When we sent a search team, they found only his shoes, perfectly placed as if he'd been lifted straight out of them. The entity continues to grow. It's functioning as we hoped. A living plug in the dimensional tier. But at what cost? It feeds on the spatial distortion. It gets larger as it consumes more of whatever lies on the other side. Day 62. I no longer trust my own perceptions. The hallways move when I'm not looking directly at them. I've started marking my path with chalk, but the marks disappear. Richards claims he's been having conversations with himself from tomorrow. Jen hasn't slept in 5 days because she says something is waiting for her in her dreams. Day 70. The prison construction above is complete. The department is bringing in actual prisoners to maintain the cover story. God help them. They don't know what's beneath their feet. Day 83. I found my way back to the normal world today, but only for a few minutes. I stepped through a door that wasn't there before and found myself in the prison kitchen. I ran for the exit but turned a corner and somehow ended up back in my office. This place doesn't want to let us go. Day 96. We're sealing the isolation wing. Those of us still down here will attempt final egress through the maintenance tunnels. I set the journal down, feeling a sudden chill of realization. The researchers themselves had become trapped in the pocket dimension they created. Some of them never escaped. Was that my fate too? I collapsed against the wall, physically and mentally exhausted. My watch now claimed I'd been here for 18 hours, though I had no way to verify that. Time itself seemed to flow differently here. I closed my eyes, trying to rest. But visions immediately filled my mind, not dreams, something more vivid. I saw Gina, Liam, and Bryce searching the prison above, calling my name as they combed through the maintenance tunnels. I could see their worried faces, feel Gina's growing panic as hours passed without finding me. They're not hallucinations, I realized aloud. They're memories. This place preserves moments in time. I forced myself to my feet, determined to keep moving even though I was exhausted. There had to be a way out. The researchers mentioned attempting final egress through the maintenance tunnels. That was how I'd gotten in. Maybe it was still my way out. I stumbled forward, following the organic corridor as it twisted unpredictably. The documents I'd found had mentioned reality anchors. Perhaps there were points where this pocket dimension was still connected to the normal world. After what felt like hours, I found myself in a massive circular chamber I hadn't seen before. The walls curved upward to form a dome, and in the center stood a complex machine that looked like the particle accelerator from the earliest photos, though now it was partially melted and overgrown with something that looked disturbingly like flesh. This was where it had all started, the point of the original breach. As I approached the machine, the air felt thick and hard to breathe. Flashbacks came faster now. I saw the moment the breach occurred, scientists shouting as reality itself tore open before them. I saw the first tendrils of the entity pushing through from somewhere beyond, and the desperate measures they took to contain it. And I understood. The massive entity I'd encountered wasn't a monster. It was a barrier. A living plug pulled partially through from another dimension, trapped between worlds to seal the breach. The isolation wing hadn't been built to contain dangerous inmates. It had been built to contain a tier in reality itself. The corpse-like appearance, the mechanical breathing, the entity was in stasis, neither fully alive nor dead, existing in a state of suspended animation while preventing something worse from entering our world. I approached the ruined machine, hoping to find some control mechanism or emergency protocol, but it was decades beyond repair. The researchers had abandoned this place when they realized they couldn't control what they'd created. My eyes spotted a small notebook wedged beneath the machine. I pulled it free and opened it to find a single page of instructions. My butt water ran icy cold while I stuffed the notebook into my backpack and turned to leave the chamber, only to find myself face to face with the entity again. As I backed away, the entity's massive head slowly turned toward me. Where I expected to see a face, there was only a smooth gray surface with 5 vertical slits that opened simultaneously, revealing a glowing interior that hurt my eyes. A sound emerged from those slits, not breathing this time, but words spoken in multiple overlapping voices. The speaker is lost. Like others, I froze, unable to comprehend that this thing was speaking to me. You remind me of the first ones. The researchers, I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Breach makers. Yes, they brought me here between worlds. The entity's words confirmed what I pieced together from the documents. The entity's massive body moved. The corridor behind it became visible as it moved aside. Go, before it is too late. I didn't need to be told twice. I squeezed past the entity, careful not to touch its pulsating flesh, and ran down the corridor it had revealed. Hours blended together as I searched frantically for any area that might be a null point. I'd been in this place for 18 hours. My water was gone. Hunger and exhaustion were taking their toll. Each time I blinked, visions filled my mind. The ceiling heights varied randomly from claustrophobically low to dizzyingly high. As my consciousness faded, one final vision came to me, the clearest of all. I saw the prison above. I understood now. It wasn't to keep people out. It was because inside it was no longer connected to our reality. In my final moments of consciousness, I thought of former lovers, their smiles, their voices, their warmth. As the dull, daft, and boring darkness claimed me, I heard the entity's alien voice once more. Rest now, Seeker. You are home. The end.